sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
And welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a podcast, which is like a radio show, but you can listen to it whenever. It happens between two sisters, one of whom is me, stand-up comedian Virginia Jones, and the other of which is Laura Ryan. Welcome, Laura.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to lighthearted larker, Virginia Jones. So, Virginia, if somebody wanted to say nice things about us on the internet, how would they go about doing that? And why do you think they should?
Item one, we love it when people say nice things about us on the internet. And two, it's really a great way to help other people find our show, let us build up to the world domination that we are seeking. It's good for the algorithm. And the great news is you can do it from anywhere. You can do it from your house, your office, your bathroom.
If you're in Australia, we'd really appreciate it because our numbers are going down there.
We're falling off in Australia. And for whatever it is I did, I'm sorry. But we would love for you to leave us a review on Apple, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Audible.
Also, the best part is you'll be featured in an episode of our podcast.
You'll be famous for a whole week and really infinity because it goes on the internet forever.
So, Virginia, each week we have a format where somebody knows nothing and someone knows everything. This week, I'm the one who knows nothing. What's it like to know everything?
It feels pretty good. Laura, this week is a listener topic. This is a listener that I went to lunch with, and it was right after you told me you'd found a very old email of theirs and you felt badly about it. It's a super interesting topic, and we got to talk about it a little bit in person. This week, we're talking about travel syndromes. So let's start with a fun one. Paris syndrome. Have you heard of Paris syndrome?
I have heard of Japanese people experiencing Paris syndrome where they cry because there's poop and pee in the streets and it smells bad.
Japanese people have a hyper glamorized vision of Paris, the Eiffel Tower and baguettes, little dogs and great art. When they find that there's huge language barriers, people can be rude, it's unexpectedly dirty, they lose their minds. They can experience acute anxiety, hallucinations, and depression, often requiring medical attention. It does affect primarily Japanese people.
Do they have a fake Paris in Japan?
I think they have one at Japanese Disney World. The shift between social norms is supposed to be especially difficult for Japanese tourists. This syndrome was documented by Japanese psychiatrist Hiroki Ota in 1986. It is rare, affecting approximately 20 people a year. Other symptoms can include nausea, tachycardia, and a psychological breakdown.
Wow. Why are the Japanese so concerned with Paris living up to their expectations?
I don't know why Paris is so romanticized in Japan, but I know in Korea, a lot of the best French bakeries are Korean in LA and now in Portland. A lot of Asian countries have a real love affair with the idea of Paris that runs right alongside cigarette-filled dog poop on the street, rude local Paris.
I pictured a cigarette that is packed tightly with dog poop. I love Paris in the springtime.
One sufferer thought that their hotel room had been bugged. One Japanese person thought that they might be Louis XIV, France's Sun King.
Seems like a pretty good one. That means you get to pee in the curtains.
The problem is important enough for the Japanese embassy in Paris to maintain a 24-hour hotline, helping people find appropriate care.
What?
Most patients improve after a couple days of rest, and some are so affected that the only known treatment is an immediate return to Japan, where it's clean and people are nice. Got to take your beret off, put down that little dog, and get back on a plane to Tokyo.
Okay. That's the only cure. Are their cities much cleaner, I guess?
Many Asian cities that I've been in have been very clean, and it is cultural. Singapore is incredibly clean. This is the guy got caned for graffiti, but it's also because it's kind of fascist. I was using a hotel gym in Singapore, and I saw that someone had left their wallet, their workout gloves, and a water bottle on a workout machine. And as an American, it was just like, I was incredulous. I looked around for if someone was unconscious, like there'd been some sort of a terrible accident. I mentioned it to someone who lived there, and they said, well, if they steal it, their hands will be cut off and they will be sent to prison. I guess that is a good deterrent.
It goes with my idea that every woman born in America should be given an AK-47 at age 10, and no man should be allowed to have a gun, period. Also, the idea that every woman should be allowed to kill one man in her lifetime without consequence.
If it reaches to 2, then you're being greedy.
I think it would really straighten up men's behavior. Grape rates would go way down.
If you're a 40-year-old woman and you've never spent your credit, imagine how careful men would be around you.
They don't know whether I've spent it or not.
It's true.
And I have an AK that I'm constantly packing because I'm allowed to, and you're not.
A less reported on syndrome, Florence syndrome, was first reported in the 80s and has since been observed more than 100 times. This hits mostly Western European tourists between the ages of 20 and 40. American visitors seem less affected. The syndrome is an acute reaction caused by the anticipation and then the experience of the city's cultural riches, museums, architecture, et cetera, et cetera. The symptoms can be as mild as palpitations, dizziness, fainting, and hallucinations, but 2/3 of the affected develop paranoid psychosis.
Why Florence?
The affliction is also known as the Stendhal syndrome after the French author who described the phenomenon during his visit to Florence in 1817. When visiting the Basilica of the Sacred Cross, where Machiavelli, Michelangelo, and Galileo are all buried, he was in, quote, a sort of ecstasy. I reached the point where one encounters celestial sensations. I walked with the fear of falling. So I think both Paris syndrome and Florence syndrome have in common, you've built up an image of something in your mind. You have heightened expectations for that, and then you experience it. In Paris, you experience the opposite of what you wanted. But in Florence, you are around some pretty great art and some pretty great churches. People are just overwhelmed. I think Americans are overwhelmed in the same way at Disneyland, where they didn't think they were going to meet that mouse in person, but then they did.
I don't remember having that experience at Disney World because I haven't been to the land. I was thinking today about how I've never taken my son to either of those places, but it's because I find them to be kind of gross and scummy.
I don't have the Disney gene. In Southern California, I met so many people who were self-proclaimed Disney nerds and Disney fanatics. I don't get it.
I knew somebody who had a friend who owned a home in the
Right.
Disney compound. Every room was Disney princess themed, and it was built that way.
It's a mental illness. We should do it on another episode. Disney people.
Disney
Are they
people.
mentally ill? Venice syndrome. This is a little darker than the last two.
Because of all the water?
People come to Venice with the express intention of killing themselves.
Well, that makes sense. You could very easily drown. It's pretty simple. There's a lot of water.
51 foreign visitors have been diagnosed with this. The subjects were both male and female, but the largest group came from Germany. Possibly this is due to the cultural impact of Death in Venice, the novel by German writer Thomas Mann, which was later turned into a film.
I've read Death in Venice. I know things.
What do you remember about it?
Very little. I remember it was really depressing.
Out of these 51 visitors, 16 succeeded. According to research conducted into the phenomenon, mainly by interviewing the 35 survivors, it seemed that the collective imagination of romantic people, the association of Venice with decline and decadence, was a recurring symbol. So just the fact that there is a book called Death in Venice, I want to die. Why not do it in Venice?
I just feel like if you want some decadence, just head over to Vegas. There's plenty of ways to unalive yourself there.
Every time I go to Vegas, I want to unalive myself.
There's that movie.
Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah.
He does leave Las Vegas. Spoiler alert.
Well, wasn't that movie like 30 years ago?
Yeah. If you haven't seen this 30-year-old Nicolas Cage movie, he does leave Las Vegas in the way that he wanted.
I avoided it because it looked super depressing.
Oh, it is. The main syndrome that my friend wanted to talk about is called India syndrome, but we're uncomfortable with that. So we're calling it seeker syndrome.
Is it referring to people in India or Native Americans?
It is Southeast Asian.
Okay.
Some travelers who spend longer periods of time in India exhibit a spectrum of behavioral and psychological changes that can be all-consuming. There's this guy in India working in the consulate, and they decided it's a good idea for people to turn their passports into him. A lot of people are losing passports. You leave your passport with him, and then when you're ready to go, you come pick it up. He was in a unique position to see the changes that were happening in people after visiting India for a time, generally longer than a couple of weeks. He said, I would see them perfect when they arrive, and after 1 month, I would see them totally unstable. Travelers were exhibiting symptoms such as depression and isolation, and just being so disoriented in an unfamiliar land or culture. In rare cases, others were diagnosed with acute psychosis, delirium, and delusion.
What is it about India?
There are two groups of people. There's people who were coming to India looking for redemption, salvation, escape,
Right.
looking to achieve
Spiritual awakening.
They are attracted to India and maybe are not 100% on the mental up and up to begin with.
They're seeking something in India that is pretty irrational.
And then the second class of person, they're just experiencing culture shock like any of the other countries. More than any other country, he wrote about travelers from the West, India has a way of stimulating the imagination and stirring intense aesthetic emotions, which can at any moment plunge the traveler into utter anxiety. The other culture shock often manifested within days of arriving. India syndrome typically emerges after weeks or months of residing in the country.
And is it because there's a lot of people, or
Part of it is drug use. He just says the trip to India begins early with the idea that we have made, conveyed by our culture, its cliches, its legends, its myths, but also our childhood fed by marvelous tales and stories.
so it's maybe somebody who's read a lot about the mythology of India.
But then you're face to face with the mythology. There are these temples everywhere, and there are giant cows sleeping in the middle of the street. You see beautiful decorated buildings and clothing, and everybody's truck is painted like a carnival. It's insane. And when you ask an Indian man, why did you paint your truck? The answer is because I had a truck. They don't imagine not painting their truck.
It's kind of a sensory overload too.
Yeah. It's a sensory overload. It can be a spiritual overload. But some of the examples of foreign travelers he observed or treated, one man burned his passport shortly after arriving, another good reason to leave your passport at the consulate, and spent 2 months in prison suffering from anxiety attacks. One had been wandering around India for 5 years, even though his parents had presumed him dead. He just totally cut off from his life at home. Another had traveled to the holy city of Varanasi and believed that the goddess Kali could hear his dreams and was speaking to him. And if you're going to be aligned with any goddess, I would say that Kali is the scariest one.
She's the goddess of war, right?
She's the destroyer. She has the blue tongue.
Mm-hmm.
She'll mess you up. And she's also my favorite. Several embassies and consulates in India have permanent psychiatrists on staff to address and treat their nationals in distress. We can break down the syndrome into 2 categories. People who are tourists but bring with them some emotional or psychological issue or trauma relating to their family or their relationships or their past. They come with turmoil and have a breakdown here. The second group is made up of those who come to India determined to have some sort of spiritual journey and eat, pray, love. They seek higher meaning or realization. They visit holy centers, they train in meditation or yoga, and then they have a challenge with the juxtaposition between what is expected and reality, and they seek an extreme break from their life at home.
So it's kind of the same in both cases.
There's common elements. You're expecting to find yourself in India, and when you find yourself, it's not what you thought.
Or you expect to find yourself in India and you realize that you're just the same old schlub that you always were.
Although drug use is rarely the only spark, it is often an accelerant. Cannabis has been consumed in India for centuries in 3 forms. The most common is bhang, with ground up leaves and seeds in a drink like a yogurt-based lassi. I didn't know that. Ganja is the flowering bud that you smoke. It makes sense that it's an Indian word. I thought it was a Jamaican word.
So they have access to pretty hardcore forms of marijuana.
Technically, marijuana is illegal, but it is used in temples and ceremonies. So it's not strictly legal. There's a gray area.
But an idiot traveler can get their hands on it.
Here's some warning signs that you are dealing with someone who is experiencing seeker syndrome. Some begin to wear one of the many forms of Indian sari. They carry walking sticks, wear red threads tied around their wrists, and sport long necklaces.
And these people are white, correct?
These people are white. One man had arrived in the city of Agra like any other tourist. He had not been on a spiritual journey, but simply wanted to see the iconic mausoleum. He tried cannabis there, something he had smoked back home with no adverse effects, but this time it had proved overwhelming. He arrived at a clinic unable to answer more than basic questions. He left everything, his backpack, his passport, everything, and just ran away. Within a month of returning to the United States, he had returned to his normal self.
I had that happen to me once. I went to the Bahamas for about 3 weeks. You could purchase at the liquor store small amounts of very poor quality weed. Me and my friends got into the habit of just having a little bit every night. And I got kind of confident. And I was thinking, yeah, I can smoke weed.
I smoke pot. I do it every day.
NBD. So then I come back to Austin and I go to a party and this man offers me a joint. And I thought, hey,
I'm a dope smoking maniac. You kidding?
I can have one hit off this joint. Instead, I spent the evening hiding under a table and someone asked me how I was doing. And I said, I feel like my brain is a meatloaf and a water balloon tied together.
The last time I smoked pot, I had had 2 alcoholic beverages and I was mad at somebody who told me that we were going to be on a date. But every time this person planned to meet me out on a date, when I got there, there were other people there and it was just a group hang. And I said, "We're going to go on a date and it's just you and me." And he said, "Yes, just you and me, nobody else." And then I got there and he was sitting with a couple that I knew and then another girl. I'm out.
So you
This
thought,
is it.
I'm going to smoke weed.
Well, the DJ was my friend and I was mad. And he was like, "Hi, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm mad." And he's like, "Do you want to smoke pot?" And I said, "Yes, that's what cool people do." I took one hit. I became incapacitated. I stumbled out to my Volkswagen Jetta. I threw up. A woman later said she saw me and I waved in her direction. And she was like, "I wasn't sure if you knew me or not." I don't remember it.
Did you drive that Volkswagen
No.
Jetta? Okay, good.
I threw up. I went to sleep for a long time. When I woke up, the person who I was mad at had texted me and said, "Oh, you disappeared." Yeah, you already had a date. You already had a date. So now I'm high in a Jetta. Thanks a lot.
Luckily, I didn't end up in a Jetta, but I was under a table for a long time.
The weed of today in the United States has been hyper bred.
Concentrated.
People walk around smoking it and achieving things, and the casual user has no place in this society.
Right. I was used to shake, as the kids would call it,
Right.
from high school, and this was not that. And I remember the guy who gave me the one hit that ruined my evening. I said, "What is this?" And he said, "Well, I'm a veteran." And I said, "You're not in the military." And I think he just meant that he smoked weed a lot.
Right.
He implied that I was not a veteran.
There was the British woman who'd been living alone for a year in a small cottage. Locals became concerned after she'd begun behaving and talking strangely and stopped paying her rent. When police arrived, she claimed she had been captured by spirits and she was on the path to complete renunciation of her previous life. She wanted to completely disconnect from everything that had happened in her life and become part of Indian society, which is not going to because she's a white lady.
This is not the way to go on your healing journey. If you want to go on a healing journey, listen to our other episode.
An American woman in her 20s had been traveling in India before withdrawing from contact with home. After months of searching, she was found living in an ashram and performing erotic half-naked dances each night. She was adamant that she was an apsara, a female mythological spirit who tempts yogis and priests to test their resolve in celibacy. She said she was fine and that this was her path, but she appeared to be in a trance.
Were these women using drugs? I guess it doesn't say.
It doesn't say 100%. In most cases, the treatment is simple. You go home and you chill out. In other more severe cases, the experiences of some individuals can leave permanent marks on their behavior even after they return home. In one case, a Japanese tourist, I guess he didn't like Paris, he was reported missing and was tracked to Varanasi, where he had had a psychotic episode and had been detained by the police after trying to board a train without a ticket. When he was brought to the clinic, he was found to be suffering from schizophrenia and sent home. 4 years later, he reappeared at that same clinic asking to be hospitalized. He liked the Indian clinic better. Some travelers come to believe that they are inhabited by spirits or are a god.
Do any of them think that they're Louis XIV?
Not usually. If a Japanese tourist heads to India and believes themselves to be Louis XIV, that could be something to talk about.
So here's the story that I've decided to make up about what's going on. I think that a lot of these folks, they have self-sorted into a mental health problem scenario where I have a mental health problem and I decide that instead of getting therapy, getting a prescription to manage my mental health symptoms, that I'm going to try to avoid said problem by traveling to a foreign land. And that does not work.
Are you sure?
I got really angry with a man on the internet recently who said, "Why try therapy? Just go to Paris." Then he's filming his croissants and stuff. And I said, "Brother, I just want you to know if you're super depressed and then you go to Paris, you're just going to be super depressed in Paris."
Or you're going to go to Paris, you're going to have a fun time, you're going to have some croissants, and then you're going to come home and be super depressed.
Right. Because I said, developing a relationship with a trained therapist who can help you to figure out why your life is not going the way you want it to is the solve. Going to Paris and trying to avoid your problems is not the solve. Going to India and trying to avoid your problems, also not the solve.
I do think that people confuse mental health with short-term happiness. This makes me feel happy. So I'll be happy when I am mentally well, when I've figured out my path in life, when I figured out what I want to do, when I've figured myself out. If I'm going to be the same amount of happy eating a croissant, I can think of one that's easier than the other.
I think the issue is that a lot of people don't want to do the work, as they say. They don't want to deal with years of education, managing prescriptions and figuring out all the difficult work to get their brain chemistry lined up so that things are working properly. And I think also the mentally ill mind convinces you of things that don't make any sense. Like I remember talking with someone that I knew who had been very depressed and decided to move to somewhere sunny by the water. And they found out that they were still depressed in the sunny place. I remember I had a client who went to Hawaii when she was in a really spiraling depressive episode. And she sat on a beautiful beach in Hawaii and cried all day because she wasn't managing the actual problem. Magical thinking and mental illness are best friends.
There's a Who song called The Seeker, and it's about the hippies in the 60s. I asked Bobby Dylan, I asked the Beatles, I asked Timothy Leary, but he couldn't help me either.
They call me the seeker.
I've been searching low and high. You do run across people like that. People who think that the next job is going to bring them what they want. There was one guy who I knew in Portland who was constantly moving apartments. This one didn't have enough parking and this one was too noisy. Dude, none of these are going to change your real situation.
Like Elizabeth Gilbert, she's a mentally ill person. I didn't read her book, but I did watch the movie and I thought, these are the behaviors of a mentally ill person who's just trying to avoid reality. She doesn't want to accept that she was unhappily married. So instead, she's trying to throw herself into something new. The thing that you're experiencing when you go to Paris for the first time or you go to India for the first time is novelty. And it feels exciting and fun, but that is not mental health.
I guess what we're talking about is the difference between short-term reward and the unglamorous truth of building a fulfilling life.
And managing your mental health symptoms in a responsible way and doing hard things that are not fun. Growth is not fun and it's not easy and it requires a lot of you. I think that people are very delusional. All kinds of people. The thing you're saying about Paris syndrome, Japanese people have made up a story about what Paris is, and then the story does not match their reality.
And people in Paris are not like people at home. When you say these people are all mentally ill, but they're people who were managing when they were in our home cultures. And I think that that's something to discuss as well. You know how to do it.
How to navigate it.
A New Yorker, as challenging and dirty and difficult as that place is, a New Yorker knows how to navigate it. They can do very well there, but if you drop them in the middle of Mumbai, they might have a harder time.
Especially if I'm in a fragile mental state, going somewhere where my whole world is turned upside down. Day is night, night is day, and nothing makes sense. That would be really hard. I remember moving to Prague, and on my first day in Prague, I got off the plane. I was walking to my rental house, and I was on the street. And I think I've mentioned the story before because it was so jarring. I was walking one direction with my little suitcase, and I'm a native Texan. And when you are a native Texan, you smile at strangers. That's just what you do. And this older woman was walking towards me, and I thought, oh, I'm going to smile at her and say hello. And she looked at me like I was trying to steal her purse. It was a very jarring, difficult experience and one that I did not expect at all. And I also did not know how much everybody hates Americans all over the world until I was all over the world. Americans, I found out, were putting maple leaves on their backpacks so that people wouldn't know they were American because you get treated very poorly as an American.
This is actually reminding me of an article I read about living abroad, people who are planning to change their lives by relocating. When you first get there, you're in this honeymoon stage where everything is better. Oh, wow, the social services system is better. The train system is better. You idealize the new culture. But when you've been there for a little while, you start finding things about it that you may not like as much. People are not as friendly. My friend Bess was horrified when she went to Norway and she texted me, everyone is so unfriendly here.
Yeah.
And she was not a Texan. She was coming from Portland.
I remember a friend had moved to Italy and he was saying, I have been attempting to mail a package for 3 weeks. And every time I go, the post office is closed. And just little things. I remember living in England and I was talking to my partner about how he needed to get a new sticker for his car. Here in the United States, specifically Austin, I go to HEB and I get the sticker there. In the UK, you have to go to a gas station, all these different steps that I had never experienced before. And it does kind of mess with your mind. this should be like this, but then it's completely different.
Also, you can't get chocolate chips, I guess, of any sort. On Christmas Day in Japan, everybody eats KFC, not just any fried chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken. At some point, the white bearded man in
Is
the
Santa
red and
Claus.
white bucket. Yeah.
There was one Japanese KFC who was trying to figure out how they could make money during Christmas time. The Japanese people and the Koreans apparently think that we during holidays also eat KFC. And it's a special bucket. I watched an unboxing of the KFC bucket. It's all these special foods that I've never seen before. Like you get a present. So it's kind of a big deal. But she said I waited in line for 2 hours for this chicken.
Wow. Other places have their own problems. Other syndrome in India that happens to native people is puppy pregnancy syndrome. People suffering from puppy pregnancy syndrome believe that shortly after being bitten by a dog, they become pregnant with puppies. Indian people in villages in India, it is a culture-bound disorder. So witch doctors will offer oral cures, which they claim will dissolve the puppies. Doctors in India have tried to educate the public that this condition is impossible and that treating this condition instead of rabies, which you should treat when you are bitten by a dog, can be dangerous.
And where did they get the idea from?
Other people say it. This only occurs in states of India, Assam, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, and West Bengal.
If I do a bunch of drugs in India and I'm bitten by a dog, I might be pregnant with puppies.
Something to think about. Laura, what are your final thoughts about seeker syndrome and people who are going other places to find themselves, but then find themselves unable to cope?
I'm going to say a thing that I always say, just go to therapy. In Japanese culture, I remember reading some statistic that 0.001% of Japanese people go to therapy. I think that we have made it such a negative thing in our minds or in our society. It's like saying, I have a splinter in my finger. Instead of putting rubbing alcohol on it and getting some tweezers out, I'm going to go to India and fix the problem. There's a very obvious, very clear path to mental health. And I believe it is medication and therapy. But a lot of people think that the solution is in weed, for example, traveling, meeting the right person, or some other fantasy, because doing really, really hard work is difficult and expensive.
I was reading a story about advertising. Prozac had really taken the United States by storm. They tried to market it in Japan, and Japanese people were like, it's normal to be sad. It's weird to have a drug where you're never sad. I think that Japanese people may just think of depression as normal life.
Depression is normal life, but I think constantly being depressed is not normal life. So, Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this topic that our wonderful listener has brought to the fore?
If you're looking to have a good time in another country, go someplace where you can pay to pet elephants. Great, do it. If you're looking for that trip to change who you are fundamentally as a person, to solve problems in your life, you may be disappointed. If you're looking for your life problems to be solved by a new car or moving apartments or getting a dog, well, getting a dog probably will solve all your problems.
I don't agree with that.
Also, therapy isn't a cure-all for everything. There's a lot of women on TikTok saying, send your boyfriend to therapy. But if your boyfriend just hates women and is misogynist, therapy won't necessarily help that.
You say that, but I think you can make an impact because I have had men who are misogynists in my office. And I think having an educated woman in front of you takes all of your illusions and breaks them apart.
You can't be therapized out of being kind of a dink.
But you can, with the correct medication and the correct treatment plan, overcome having, for example, these psychotic breaks.
What country do you think you're most likely to have a psychotic break in?
I think the location where I probably most likely have a psychotic break would be New York City.
Yeah, I can see that.
Every time I go there, I want to scream.
It really puts me on edge. And I find when I get home from New York, I'm meaner for a couple of weeks because I've been living in this dog eat dog, I'll throw you in the street.
I'm in more of a Katy Perry kissing the ground when I land at the airport mindset.
I was asked to make a promotional video for a company in response to something Katy Perry had said, and I started writing it. They sent me the brief. You can't make fun of Katy Perry. I'm like, I don't want it.
There's nothing to say if I'm not
There's nothing to say.
horribly making fun of her.
But Katy Perry and I have a lot of things in common. We both have bangs. We both are embarrassed by our previous attraction to Russell Brand. And we both pretended to be female astronauts.
You were also both raised in a religious cult.
That's true.
And you're both caucasoid as all get out.
Hella Caucasoid. That's actually my new band. I think I might lose my mind if I were on a beach for an extended period of time. I can't stand beach people. I can't stand being on the beach. I'm not suited to it.
I'm utterly confounded by that because I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be than a beach.
My friend Matt Kirshen posted a video of himself on a beach, and it said British person on a beach, and he was wearing sunglasses under a large umbrella, hugging his knees to his body. He gets it.
I always try to have a large umbrella because of the old big C that I'm trying to avoid.
You have to pack a lifetime of items into a car just to survive going to the beach.
But when you get there, my God, is it worth it?
Laura, where can people write us if they have a show idea or they want to communicate something to us as people?
They can send us an email like our listener has to hello@mysistersatherapist.com. I'm going to try not to wait 4 months. I don't know. This one slipped through the cracks. Apologies to the listener. Also, if they're interested in hiring us and giving us money to sell stuff, they can send us an email to hireus@mysistersatherapist.com. Virginia, if somebody wants to go to India and escape their life, but doesn't have the money and they'd rather just go to Portland, how could they find out more about your live shows?
You can find me at my website, www.badinia.com, which sounds like it's in India, but it is not. And it might be a city in India. I'm not sure. Oh, no. Badinia is in Ethiopia.
Oh, fun fact to know and tell, folks.
Almost all of the word Badinia is hooked to me, but also it is a small place in Ethiopia.
You should do a live show in Ethiopia.
That'd be fun. So you can go to my website, find my calendar, and find lots of fun stuff about me, including a map of every place I've done comedy, which does not include Badinia, Ethiopia. Laura, where can people find you on the internet if they wish to work with you or just see your amazing TikToks?
They can find my amazing TikToks on TikTok at I am Laura Ryan. They can also look at our shared Instagram page, My Sister's a Therapist Instagram. If they're interested in finding out about working with me and they live in the state of Texas, my website is lauraryan.org. Also, if they want to just watch videos of our podcast episodes, they can go to YouTube or they can go to our website, mysisterstherapist.com.
Laura, now is the time of the podcast where you sometimes share a positive review someone has left us. Do you have one to share this week?
I most certainly do. This is an email from Fada, and it says, "Hello, Virginia and Laura. I just finished the Building Wellness episode with Lane Hicks, the architect. Great episode. When Laura writes her life story memoir, it should be titled The Worst Diarrhea." Thanks for this podcast. Thank you. I think I will title my memoir The Worst Diarrhea.
Thank you for that. And thank you to Fada and to our spiritual leader, Billy Ray Valentine, Capricorn. As he once said, we can make it, baby.
Me and you. Bye.
Bye.